Hello and happy today's teach of you folks. I hope you guys are having an absolutely amazing day today. So today on Friday, I like to do top 10s of older things, sometimes newer stuff too here and there, of things that were started that I think is fun for the channel, like which is typically reviews, short stories, or novels and written word in the three genres that we cover in science fiction, fantasy, and horror too. And then tons of novels, movies, like for sci-fi films, classic films, independent films, that sort of thing too. I thought it would be nice, since this show started off and it's titled after reading reviews of older stuff that you might have forgotten about, and sort of thing too, or you might not have ever even heard of before. I thought it would be nice to start doing these things. So I did my top 10 authors a couple times, and then I did my top 10 novels of the 30, and my novels, and that sort of thing too. And so now we've been moving on to my much more favorite short stories for you folks. Novels have only recently been a trend of reading, and that sort of a thing too. Short stories were typically written at much larger lengths. Like for example, back in the pulp era, people tended to write short stories. They would write more, maybe 4 or 5 a week in some cases, right? In some prolific authors' case, or at least 3 or 4 a month, versus maybe a novel every 3 or 4 months, right? And that sort of a thing too. So it's more prolific. I also prefer the horror short story to the novel. I think it's a shorter thing, and a very nice, powerful concepts and that sort of thing too. So you'll tend to find more of those here in my thing. I started off being a fan of fantasy. I read tons of novels that were published after I read J.R. Tolkien's The Lord of the Rings in grade school. And then I kept reading fantasy tons here and there, with things hitting the charts like R.A. Salvatore's, my favorite author too, and then I started to read Michael Moorcock in high school. But then in college, I started to read some horror collections of In the Cthulhu Mythos, and then 2 other ones by H.P. Lovecraft, my favorite author. And I've read thousands. I've read short stories in the horror genres and other things too. I did read some science fiction collections here and there too, like ones for this channel, as well as things like the greatest sci-fi stories of all time, and the Science Fiction Hall of Fame too, by the science fiction writers. So science fiction will represent, and there'll be a few science there too. All right, but here we go. You ready for my third top 10 short stories? Alrighty, there we go. Also, novellas are here too, so just as it. Number 10 is Clark Ashton Smith's The Voyage of King Euphron from 1932. This is set in the Zothic post-apocalyptic thing. So basically what's happening here is that he has the King of Euphron is a king of a great state, and he has inherited a crown with a dead bird as its plumage. And then that will end up getting reanimated by a necromancer, and then fly away to its home as somebody who's angry at him, and that sort of thing too, in order to get back down. And so now he sets out in the voyage with a bunch of ships, and he heads out, and it's kind of like an odyssey in a futuristic, dying Earth sort of world of Zothic, with some sci-fi, some fantasy stuff too. Love it lots. Number 10. The Voyage of King Euphron by Clark Ashton Smith from 32. Number 9 is Fritz Lieber's Lean Times in Langmar. This is a novella from 1959. This is set in the Grey Mouser and the Fafhrd Langmar series, which are about 2 thieves that have thieves guilds set in the giant city of Langmar. He definitely changed fantasy and people too. He created thieves guilds, that sort of a concept too. The giant metropolis as a city, Langmar proper, rather than more rural places, or maybe more kingdoms with medieval sorts of structures, right? Definitely. So that sort of thing too. So all those things are big. So basically what's happening here is that our 2 main characters in this novella have started to break apart. And it's Langmar is getting some particularly bad stuff is happening, and Fafhrd has turned towards becoming a priest, a protector, since he's a very strong guy. This is partly fief-based sword on Conan, and then the Grey Mouser has started to turn his talents for some darker business interests. And that's Lean Times and Nightmare, and 59 by Fritz Lieber. Then number 8 is The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs from 1902. This could be considered a fantasy if you want to consider it a basic idea of demons, of a wish being granted. But I don't really think it would be maybe a push to make it fantasy. But basically the idea here is that a couple will come across a collection of things that are given to them by this person, and there is in there this monkey's paw from this person's trip to a far, I think it's in Africa, and then it has a cursed wish, so the wish will come true, but not in the way that you think according to the object. But then something happens that tragic is punished, to the couple, and then she'll make a wish, and then you'll figure out what happens. And this kind of a cursed wish is definitely a concept we'll see recur again and again. Love it lots. Alright, and next up is Red Nails by Robert E. Howard from 1936. It's also a novella too. So basically, this was his final Conan song. Then he turned to other things. He wanted to kind of put everything he has into this. So himself and a woman fell apart, and that sort of thing too. Are head up in a pyramid after trying to flee from some bad guys that are chasing them. I want to kill them. And monsters and that sort of thing too. In that era, that pyramid is definitely has some very decaying infrastructures of people that are still living inside. So basically, I love it lots. One of the things I actually really like about Red Nails is that it's a good example, a counter example to women back then that were often portrayed as either the innocent person who needs to be protected and loved and saved and that sort of thing, or the sexually available sort of promiscuous. So in this case, she's a fire just as strong as Conan, just as powerful as Conan, and she actually has ballads about her too, just like Conan does. So I definitely like her in here too. So that's Red Nails by Robert E. from 36. Now, number 6 is H.G. Wells's The Stolen Basilisk from 1895. So this is an absolute classic in my mind. It wasn't the greatest science fiction collection. So basically, what's happening here is that somebody has created a disease and that will can hurt people and that sort of a thing too, and then it gets stolen. So now I got to find it back. And that sort of thing too, as you can tell from the title, The Stolen Basilisk. But what happens? What will end up happening? And that sort of thing too. But yeah, it's great stuff. I definitely like this idea of the Stolen Basilisk, right? And I think it's great stuff. And you can definitely see his H.G. Wells's future-proofing here too, because diseases that are designed in a jar or a petri dish are definitely things that are happening today, right? Alright, so number 5 is The Moon Pool by A. Merritt, not top 5 time. This is from 1918. This is his first major short story. I put him on a map in a major way. It sold huge numbers of people. He actually would do a novelization where he takes this, modifies it a little bit, and turns it into a novel proper. But I'm doing the original. And this is a an awesome horror combination, kind of like H.P. Lovecraft or Algernon Blackwood would be known for. I do really enjoy what's happening here, and that sort of a thing too. So basically, what's happening here is an expedition is happening to Nan Madol. Nan Madol was a recently discovered artificial island created with stones that we don't know how, out in Micronesia. That was the city of a sea over in the Atlantic area. I'm sorry, Pacific area. And this sort of gave rise to the idea of Lemuria, of this, and that sort of thing too. This dish and that sort of thing too, that was heavily influential on proving that Lemuria as a sort of the Pacific Atlantis was true. And it put it on the map in a major way. I love this short story. It's one of my favorite expedition short stories. I absolutely adore this by Abraham Merritt so much. A. Merritt, he published by. Now, number 4 is The Yellow Wallpaper from 1892, not 1982, like I was going to say, by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. I have read this tons of times. I first was given it in a collection of horror short stories called Midnight Fright when I was a kid for December as a Christmas present. I read it as an elementary school, like all of these things. A few of these will actually be hitting. In fact, one will be hitting number one here in just a couple seconds. But then, more of these will be hitting too. These classic strong horror stuff. And then I read it again in junior high for like when I was 8th or 9th grade, a couple of years later for my class, a few times more for college too, and literature class too. And then in high school at a different city. And then also read it for this channel, reviewed it a couple of times in that collection too. So yeah, about like 6 or 8 times, right? And that sort of thing too. It's an absolute classic, love it lots. And I do think that there is a horror element to this, although you might just say it's just menstrual depression, postpartum depression, right? It's totally understandable. Sure, but I think that this could also be seen as a horror short story too, love it lots. So I have done my review of it. I think the creepiness is here, the greatness is here. I love it lots. And it's a classic of mine. Number 3 is my highest rated Philip K. Dick short story, which I read in a collection of all of his short stories for you folks. And this is 1953's Second Variety for you folks. The Second Variety is basically, it's set in the future after the Cold War has continued and pushed on. And basically we're sending out like robots and things like that to turn things. It's actually turned into a film called Screamers of Our which I haven't seen. I love it. I think this is more of a military science fiction than he typically was done. I think he does a great job with a Second Variety. I absolutely adore what's happening here. Love it. So that's my favorite Philip K. Dick short story. Or story. You can see my favorite novel too, if you just compare them. Number 2 is Edgar Allan Poe time. And this is The Fall of the House of Usher by him from 1989. I guess I'm saying it in the wrong order. 1839 for you folks. It's an absolute classic. So basically this put, I think, the idea of visiting a haunted house and that sort of a thing on the map in a major way. Hugely influential. Of course, Edgar Allan Poe is hugely influential just generally for stuff. And that sort of a thing too. I've actually already read this once for high school, then once in literature class, and then once more for my in the book of H.P. Lovecraft's favorite weird tales. This is one of his favorite. This is a very Edgar Allan Poe story, and Poe's hugely influential on tons of books. Right, so The Fall of the House of the Usher is incredibly strong, love it lots. And this is that from 1839. And now my favorite Guy de Maupassant story, also the phenomenal one in Midnight Fright, which I've read probably tons of times. But it's a longer short story than his typically fast, but definitely some clever endings, is The Horla. And many actually like The Horla too. Now this is kind of from 1887. It's a longer one. It was written when he was in an asylum. And then he was put there. And that sort of a thing too, near the end of his life, and then he'll actually die there. And so many people consider this his swan song. Guy de Maupassant is definitely a misogynistic guy, just as a heads up, in case you want to stay away from his stuff. But you can read it for free online. So basically what's happening here is that our key character is in a house with a visitor, and definitely when he explains it, you can definitely see cosmic horror all up and down the blocks. I think this is a great example of cosmic horror, the original example, if you will, because it's from 1887. We know Lovecraft wrote about it because he talks about this in the Best Weird Stories, Best Horror Stories collection, and that sort of thing too. But I don't know how influential it actually was. But the writing here is great. I love the script. It's here. It's happening. It's great stuff. Dude, love it lots. And so that's number 1, The Horla by Guy de Maupassant. Now we're going to go over my top 10 once more. The third one, we'll keep up on this because I love this stuff so much. I have tons more. I've got like at least another video series to pull up. For you folks, at number 10 is Clark Ashton Smith's The Voyage of King Uveron. Number 9 is Fritz Lieber's Lean Times in Lankmar. Number 8 is The Monkey's Paw by W.W. Jacobs. Number 7 is Red Nails by Robert E. Howard. Number 6 is H.G. Wells' The Stolen Basilisk. Number 5 is The Moon Pool by A. Merritt. Number 4 is The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman. Number 3 is Philip K. Dick's Second Variety. Number 2 is The Fall of the House of Usher by Edgar Allan Poe. And number 1 is The Horla by Guy de Maupassant for you folks. And I've actually done a bunch of Guy de Maupassant reviews for you folks. Just all of his horror stuff is a part of this. He has a collection of folks from Biden Banner Group. So you can check that out too if you're interested in following up more. Right, so there you are for you folks. Now, as a reminder, I'm not a trained critic. I didn't study literature criticism. I didn't study English major in college. None of that stuff. Right. I'm just a fan like you are. So I'm not coming to this from a place of expertise, right? So that means your opinion is just as valid as mine is, right? So let me know what your thoughts are. Would you agree? Have you read these 10 short stories? Would you put them in this order? What will be your top 30? Overall, let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Now, like I mentioned before, I do lots of these reviews of these older things. And then short story stuff. And then I do 3 of these reviews a week of older things that you read in 3 genres we talked about before. And then on Wednesday, I do older video game reviews and that sort of thing too. I just did my top 10 value video games. And then I'll hit back video game reviews moving forward. So you can check that out too. On Saturday, I review older movie and TV serials. I just did Captain Midnight a couple days ago. So I'll be reviewing that for you folks. It's a 15 chapter long from the early 40s. So you can check that out too. I've also done lots of recent stuff too. And then on Monday, I do reviews of tabletop RPGs and war games like Battletech, Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing too. So you can check that out too. All right, open the box. And then if those 7 older, plus occasional Let's Plays too, sound like your cup of tea, well then great. Welcome to the channel and have a seat. I think you'll enjoy your time here quite a bit, right? I'll open on the blocks. And while you're here, please do all of the YouTube stuff, like hit the subscribe button, the like button, the bell button to be notified of those videos and that sort of thing too, and share and watch and that sort of thing. Already, I'll open the box for you folks. It's appreciated much. As you can tell from those older 7 things, like I mentioned before, it's even where its title comes from too. The passion of finding these older things. For many of these things were sold on my top 30s. You can even read them online for free, right? You can check that stuff out. Alrighty, so there, and then as you can tell, that's the passion of this channel, finding these older things for it. And you know, many people in the quest for new novels, new video games, they have sometimes forgotten that these things are standing on the shoulders of giants. Not that they're bad by default, right? But you get the idea. And all these short stories from today, from decades ago, or even centuries ago in some cases, or definitely some things we might have forgotten about are heavily influential in today's stuff. For you folks already saying, I want to thank you so very, very much for just taking some time out of your day and investing it, right, into watching my videos, because we all have so many things that are happening in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions too, right? So thank you. Spend this time with me. That's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate that so very, very much. Thanks again, and have an amazing day.